Okay. Yeah, 32 people. That's fine. Yeah. Hold on. Let me start the recording before anything.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna start off like this. I mean, I want to make a differentiation between, and for us to come to an understanding, martial arts and then like the applications of martial arts. Do you get what I'm saying?
What would be the differentiation under your point of view?
Well, an application would be using the martial arts to do certain things. Like, for example, invisible attacks is the combination of your martial arts skill, your raw physical stats to create a phenomenon.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think in that case specifically, yeah, definitely. Right.
Okay. So then we have an application and then we have like what martial arts are. So then like you know how like the history of like martial arts start, right? Because there's a lot of things that they renamed themselves, but at the end of the day, they're the same thing. Like Tachyon from Asia, from China, is literally just Sistema. Sistema is a more modern version.
More Russian martial arts.
Exactly, but it's literally Tachyon. It's the same thing, but it's more modernized.
Yeah. There are certain martial arts which are derivative of others. Yeah, I understand.
What is it? Kickboxing. Like, so the origins, so the three base martial arts, which everything else derives from, is wrestling, boxing, and just give me 2 seconds. Let me get the last name on the other one. I'm drawing a blank on it. Just give me 2 moments. I know wrestling is the first ever martial art. Like ever. And then here we go. What was the other one?
Boxing. Are going to kind of like argue that if he knows these like base martial arts, then like he should know like the others derivative of these martial arts.
Here it is. Yeah, boxing, wrestling, and pancration. Those are the base for everything. But you can expand further into it. But knowing all martial arts, what do you have in mind for that idea? Because I know what I have in mind, but I want to see like what's your opposition to that. Because he's displayed before I finish. Yeah, he's displayed. He knows wrestling. He displays he knows multiple levels of karate and kickboxing and striking on like all the most fundamental levels. We know he has we know he has some idea of how to deal with weapons and stuff like that in close quarters combat. All the things, all the necessary tools to being able to call or proclaim the title of being a master of all martial arts. So I want to know what your opposition is to that.
Oh, okay. So it seems as if I have a bit more, you could say, specific metric of like knowing all martial arts. So I would say that like in your case, it seems as if you're trying to make like an argument where you're saying that, well, he knows these fundamental core martial arts concepts, right? That you could say started off history.
He knows more, and he knows even to the extensions of them. But so he knows all the way up to where you could say you're a master of all martial arts. Everything else that I think that you could say that it wouldn't be applicable to him would be different applications, but I don't think that applications are considered martial arts. I think when you have to look at martial arts, you have to look at the skills that are required. Like, for example, if we take out the martial arts in general, it would be fundamentally boxing, it would be kickboxing and Muay Thai and Litway, which those are literally just pancration with a different name, right? And then we have wrestling, which is the fundamental for all grappling. And then wrestling turns into BJJ. So I feel like I just have to prove he knows wrestling, BJJ, all the fundamentals of pancration, and then the fundamentals of boxing. Because from when we get from there, the applications of them, like in military, they're not. The military hasn't created their own martial arts. They're just using martial arts in specific situations where they're needed
from historical periods. Yeah. Okay. I would say this, right? So I definitely think that the application of like a particular martial art definitely contributes to how we understand it. I believe that it is a bit absurd to kind of like, you could say, ignore this perspective of martial arts. If anything, martial arts as a whole is a practical application of a particular style, a fighting style more specifically, right? So I definitely think that application is definitely something which is indispensable. Now, if we like take into consideration like Muay Thai and like karate, for example,
you could say. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I want to let you continue, but I don't know what you said. You said martial arts is an application of a style. I think the point that I was alluding to is that there are applications of martial arts to do certain things. I know martial arts are applications of styles of fighting. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying that there are other things with other names that are applications of things that are already martial arts. So you can't just call these different martial arts. They're just the same thing. Just being used
I wouldn't. So this is the issue I'm gonna have. We both see eye to eye in the thing.
Wait, give me a second. Who is that?
Yeah.
I don't
know who the fuck is that.
Yeah, go. You continue.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. I think that we see eye to eye when it comes to, like, for example, invisible attack requiring certain like physical statistics or attributes alongside like you could say certain styles to create this like new phenomenon that we consider to be invisible attack. We see eye to eye on that.
He's using, but he's using his speed and kickboxing, he's using kickboxing. Which in kickboxing, I don't know if you watch many kickboxing or like K1 matches. They literally use like angle switches, and even in Muay Thai too. But he's not using Muay Thai. He's using kickboxing. Now they use angle switches or like positioning with their feet to attack you in your blind spot.
Do you think James Lee like used capoeira when he uses like invisible attacks, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whatever?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is grappling. I'll make that clear.
Oh, not Jiu-Jitsu, sorry. I mean kickboxing.
Yeah, he uses a combination of both. He uses a combination of kickboxing.
Yeah, it seems as if he majorly like uses like capoeira when he like uses invisible attacks. But that's just something. That was just like a fun fact I want to like establish for a moment. But that's
when he's I'll say when he's doing when he's airborne and trying to get away, he uses capoeira. When he's more on his feet, he's using just fundamentally kickboxing, and he's using kickboxing to be able to get to the blind spots. Now, for the other portion of it, he's just super fast. That's why they're invisible.
So I think what you're trying to establish here is just that, well, let's just like break down the arguments you're trying to present here. So the argument here is just that, well, if it is the case that martial arts isn't just something which is confined to the application of a particular fighting style. And
can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that real quick?
Oh, yeah. I'm saying that I'm pretty sure your argument is just basically that if it is the case that martial arts isn't just, you could say, reducible to the application of fighting style, it is something which is, you could say, almost conceptual, something which is rooted from like certain core concepts, like for example, wrestling.
We don't disagree. We don't disagree there. We don't disagree. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree on that.
Yeah,
I think we disagree on like the extrapolation you're making from that specific fact. So
there are
we have these core concepts. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we agreed to the point that what James Lee is doing isn't a brand new martial art. It's just an application of his martial arts, right?
Well, when you say a brand new martial art, if you want to say by a brand new martial art, you're saying that it is conceptually different or it doesn't really share any form of like similar attributes, then sure, right? But I still think that there's definitely certain attributes which distinguishes both.
I'm not saying it's conceptually different. I'm saying that what he's doing is just kickboxing, or he's using martial arts, but on another level because of his physical stats. Now, because kickboxers already, what they do is, and capoeira people, they get into these positions where they throw kicks from angles where you're not able to see them. That's one half of the equation. We know that the other half of the equation, they just have to be incredibly fast. So he's not inventing a new martial art. They just call what he's doing invisible attacks because of the combination of both his speed and his kickboxing prowess. It's not a martial art.
Yeah, so invisible attack, I wouldn't say that it's really like a new martial art in itself, really. I believe that it is just like, sorry about that, I believe it's just like a reapplication of certain martial arts, but to a much greater degree of speed, to the point where, as you said prior, Chris, like this new phenomenon, this like surprise element in combat. So I grant this, but what I don't necessarily grant is, well, we can grant, like, let's just couple the points we both which a compromise on. So we agree on the idea that invisible attacks are, again, just attacks normal martial arts to a much greater speed than the average, than the conventional means. And that we also grant that it is most likely the case that Daniel has an understanding of the core concept of the core martial arts.
Well,
right?
More than the core. Really good degree. And this is what I'll extrapolate on. He has more than the core. He knows the core and even to the more modernized extents of them. So he knows the more improved, he even knows the more improved version of Tachyon.
Yeah, like even the wrestling
thing. He's performing wrestling techniques and even BJJ techniques where you're like, he's up against the wall, that's more of the BJJ is probably the more recent martial art. Like that's considered a martial art, but besides everything else was just a variation. That's the more recent one. And he knows that as well because he was using like BJJ techniques against these people, like guard pulling, like and like blocking their wrestling attacks like that, like even like choke. So he definitely knows that as well. So he knows.
I think I'm spending like a little bit of like semantic disputes in the air right now, because I believe that the only form of disagreement that we're having right now, which could kind of like determine the factor or the result of this debate, is what exactly does it mean for something to be a martial art. You believe that it's just the core foundation which determines whether two, I guess you could say, fighting application or practical applications are the exact same from a martial arts point of view. I believe that we have to place into consideration these quote-unquote variations and the fact that there's still some subtle distinctions between the practical applications that is used by a fighting user or combative user.
The thing that I'm saying, and the thing that I'm saying, I understand what you're saying, but when we have things like karate and kickboxing and then Muay Thai and then Li Tui, if they have different moves or different move sets, I'll entertain them as being a different martial art, which is why I think Li Tui and Muay Thai, even though they're very similar, they're a whole different martial art. And I'm open to that, but which you, Daniel, knows as well. But the thing is, my issue is like when we take off in the variations, like for example, when we talk about things like close quarters combat, all is doing is taking different martial arts and using them for the correct scenario at the correct time. That's what the military tactic is.
Yeah, he's like using like the martial arts that are most convenient in a particular circumstance. Yeah, I think that is something which is rational, reasonable to believe in. But then again, it's going to circle back to, I mean, even you are reasonable enough to compromise on the fact that there can be two like martial arts which shares like a whole lot of like similar attributes, but they're still distinct. They're still distinct martial arts. So the possibility that
I'll explain this. In the case of the example that I gave you, the only differentiation between Muay Thai and Li Tui is literally a headbutt. They have all the same moves, but the reason why they're different is because there's a headbutt and there's more brutality involved, which is why I think they're different martial art, and the rule sets are different. But Daniel, you also utilizes his Muay Thai alongside with a headbutt, so he does know Li Tui. I know he does Li Tui because he uses the same move they do. They would headbutt people, like they would throw a punch and they would headbutt.
Oh, are you talking about like when he uses like his head to like block like one of those guys' punches or some shit?
Yeah, that's Li Tui. That's a Li Tui technique.
So I would say in response that so I think you compromising or agreeing to that idea, which is that we can have, even though in this case the only distinction between Li Tui and Muay Thai is just the headbutt, I believe that there can be martial arts out there, right, which actually could, because we understand that like Lookism is a very crazy verse, right? There are certain superhuman stuff that we observe in Lookism, like niggas like characters' consciousness being switched across bodies, and like even the concept of certain, you could say, fighting style, it's kind of like over exaggerated to some extent. So I'm saying that because your position here is that Daniel, right, he has knowledge of all martial arts in the sense where he masters all martial arts in the Lookism verse, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying that in this case, it is perfectly feasible for there to be martial arts, like more advanced version of certain martial arts that we've already observed, or martial arts, that we haven't observed, that Daniel may know, but not know to the extent that you believe he knows these martial arts.
I mean, that'd be
to actually practically apply it in the most useful circumstances.
Yeah, making a claim like that, I think I'd have to actually to prove that, because I already went over like there could be more advanced versions, but the advancement in what I believe in is just somebody have a more advanced version.
What'd you say, Jerome?
Somebody having a more advanced version of a martial art, which is them. Who is that talking?
The law kid.
Who is that talking? Bro. Somebody mute them, bro. I don't understand who it is. But yeah, somebody having a more advanced version of a more advanced version of a martial art, which is them being would be them being faster and stronger. I don't think currently, like if you're trying to make a claim that there are more advanced versions of martial arts that Daniel doesn't know, under the case of physical stats, I don't think it's feasible to me, because he's literally just like the pinnacle of like human force as stated in the thing. But if you're trying to imply that there are some other more advanced versions in the case of moveset changes in the martial arts that he knows, can you just I'd like you to prove that, because I don't think that's the case.
Okay, so as you know what my position is, I'm just against your position, right? I just don't believe there's any good reason to grant your position to be the case, right? And in the case of Daniel, you say that like he's this, like you could say, you could say this indisputable force that has to be, that is, you could say, recognized as the supposed peak or one of the peak martial artists in the verse. I mean, that is something I can agree with, but at the same time, you just, I guess, I don't like how you just, you could say, blindly ignored the feasibility of there being martial arts which are similar to but not the exact same as some of the martial arts that has been already used by UI Daniel. Right, I don't like how you just dismissed that to be like an unfeasible
I'll explain
conclusion.
why.
Wait. Let me just say one
more.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I just don't appreciate how you like kind of like dismiss that as like an unfeasible conclusion for the sake of, you could say, adhering to your belief and position, really, without any true rational basis or symmetry breaker.
Well, there is, and I've kind of explained it during the debate.
Bro, what are these gifs, bro?
Yeah, there is, and I'll explain it. I've already explained it a couple times during the debate. There's not much of a difference between impact creation is the most fundamental version of kickboxing. There's not much of a difference between what they're doing in pain creation versus modern day kickboxing, other than that they've established a rule set to restrict the brutality of it. Right now, there's literally, and I understand that there could be things that are really similar that have slight differences, but the slight differences don't apply to every martial art. If they're doing different stuff, then it's just another martial art, which he probably knows. Like, for example, when I talk about Muay Thai and Li Tui, they're from the same culture. The only difference that's been brought up with them is just the headbutt, and which I've shown that he knows them because of, and UI Daniel literally uses them both. So, and then kickboxing, there's not much more you could deviate from kickboxing. If you completely deviate from the scheme of what it is, which is, having a guard and incorporating multiple styles of kicks, which he does know, within striking advantages and within like some type of boxing type angle type fight, then there's not much you could deviate from that. There's also not a lot you could deviate from boxing at all. Like, boxing there's not much you could, it's basically the same from older times till now. There's not much you could deviate from it.
Okay.
Same thing with wrestling especially. There's not, like, unless you could show me like an insane deviation of wrestling, which probably doesn't exist. I think there's like burden on you to show me some type of like feasible deviations of these modern martial arts, and then maybe we could come to some type of agreement. But so from what I'm seeing, modern day, there really isn't at all.
Oh, okay. So I think that the statement you made, like regarding the fact that, well, there aren't really any insane variations of these type of martial arts, I think that it's based on some prior knowledge regarding your understanding of martial arts from a realistic, real life point of view. And I don't think this would necessarily cross over or be coextensive. Or you're gonna.
Somebody was talking about background. Somebody was talking about background.
Oh, can I continue?
You can continue now. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was just saying that I believe that your claim regarding that specifically is predicated on like certain, you could say, real life concept or understanding of these martial arts, and the fact that from a real life perspective, it is unfeasible for us to imagine or conceive of any martial arts that is similar to these type of martial arts that we know currently, that is different in terms of like variation. And I believe that would have worked if it wasn't the case that, regardless of the fact that Lookism actually imitates some of these concepts, they imitate it in such an over-exaggerated and unrealistic manner that it allows for the possibility of certain like unfeasible variations within that specific verse.
I'll address that right away. The reason why they're unrealistic is in the sense that these people are unrealistically strong and fast in comparison to us. In the sense of, and I'll ask you this, can you show me a difference in the sense of technique and not power and strength?
Difference in the sense of technique, not power and strength? Well, I don't recall me saying that I'm going to show you a specific difference. I'm just affirming.
That's not what I think you said. I'm saying you said you were talking about that they're like completely unrealistic in the way that they're fighting. And I'm saying I agree, but in the sense that they're being unrealistic.
What do you mean by technique, really?
Well, technique is how you fight, like how a boxer throws a punch would be, rotating his hips and that, and then and that creates, and from that branches kickboxing because they use the same hip rotations to throw the kicks, right? So you're saying that they do these things in unrealistic ways. I'm saying I agree because they're hitting people so hard that people in our real life can't hit people that hard. It's almost physically impossible. But they're still using fundamentally, they're doing the same thing. They're using the same techniques. There's no deviation from that.
Okay. So my response to this is going to be, if technique is just basically, broadly speaking, just how you fight and how you implement certain, like you could say, understanding of, or a certain like understanding of fighting styles in combat, right? I believe
it's what the martial arts are.
Yeah, I understand, right? So I'm just gonna say this, right? I'm just gonna say if speed and strength are things that are automatically applied when we like use like a fighting technique, right? These are like, you could say, background like factors in the efficiency of a technique or how you carry out the technique specifically. Don't you think that regarding the fact that these characters has an unrealistic amount of like speed and strength and so on, they would be able to bring out new levels, new potentials of already established techniques that we understand from the real life verse or real life?
And I don't disagree with you in that, but it doesn't create a new martial art. It just makes you a better fighter. Like, for example, Deontay Wilder brought up a whole new stratosphere of boxing because he had a right hand that was so unbelievably crazy that he just knocked everybody out in one punch. So what I'm saying is they could bring out unrealistic conditions to how hard and how fast they're hitting people. But at the end of the day, this dude is still using boxing. Zach Lee is still using Mike Tyson style. No matter how unreasonably strong he is, he's still using the peekaboo style. He's still boxing. There's nothing that you could tell me that he's not using boxing anymore. He's not like creating some transcendental new martial art. He's transcendental in the sense that he's a transcendental boxer. But him being a boxer never changes. It's just he's a very strong and fast boxer, unrealistic to our.
I think that is a good analogy, actually, and I believe that in that specific case, you could say that the reason as to why he's still within the realm of boxing, he's still actually boxing, and he's still a boxer in that sense, is because in terms of like the core concept, right, like the fundamental understanding of his fighting style, it still correlates to boxing as a whole. It still matches the boxing description. However, as you said, right, based on like certain like improvements, physically speaking, he created like this new stratosphere of boxing, right? He's able to like achieve new heights, right? So I'm saying that like in that specific. Yeah, I'm saying that in that case, if you come, wait, just let me just.
I'll tell you something about background. You got it. You can do
it. Yeah, I was gonna say that. The fact that he created like this new stratosphere of boxing, right? You could say that if we compare his specific boxing style, like the efficiency of that, technique-wise, and like normal boxers, there's going to be like a radical distinction, in terms of like efficiency and utility and how he carries out that technique in itself, to the point where it almost appear as if they're like different techniques, just in virtue of how much more useful one is in comparison to the other.
Well, so I'm saying that. Go ahead. You're saying these things that they appear to be different techniques, but at the end of the day, in Lookism, we see that he becomes massively stronger in like blitz level and like massively stronger from the beginning to the current part of the series that we're in. And again, it still looks like he's boxing. He's literally saying, I'm using the peekaboo style. So I'm asking you, is them being faster and stronger, and from all the analogy I've given you, make it so that when they're boxing, they're not boxing anymore, even though they're using all the boxing techniques? Is that the case?
Well, I think the point of my argument isn't to demonstrate explicitly that they're specific techniques or fighting styles, which you could say are radically distinct from the martial arts that we see within Lookism. I think what I was generating there, is a consistent trend of like Lookism having certain unrealistic features fighting wise. So even if it is a case that so far these unrealistic features just pertain to like speed and strength and all of that, considering that Lookism has this trend of lack of realism, right? Lack of like, you could say, realistic features regarding fighting style. You could say, well, you could. I'm saying that.
Come to an agreement. Yeah, we have to come to an agreement here. It's in this. We've come to an agreement here. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's in the terms of strength, which is why I'm coming to the question of, to you, does somebody being stronger and faster, like the Deontay Wilder example, Deontay Wilder is on another level in sense of strength than all the boxers, but fundamentally what he's still doing is boxing. Does him being much stronger mean he's not boxing?
Yeah, I've already compromised with that fact, right? I've already said that, yes, fundamentally speaking, he's still a boxer. I'm saying that in the case of this specifically, right, I'm just presenting like an inductive reason on the table here. I'm just saying that, well, we understand these facts. These facts are, well, Lookism is known for having unrealistic features in terms of combative circumstances and how we understand combat,
right? In terms of these
unrealistic features. Even though these unrealistic features, as we know it currently, is confined to strength and speed, that doesn't invalidate the fact that there are still these unrealistic features in the first place. And these unrealistic features grounds the consistent trend of there being unrealistic combative features in the series. And because of such, it is definitely feasible. Wait, hold on. It's definitely feasible for these unrealistic features to now expand to the realm of techniques in Lookism.
I disagree. Yeah, I knew you were gonna go to that angle, but you're talking about a consistent trend. The consistent trend here is that they're just consistently strong and fast. And within this consistent trend, they keep their technique no matter how much stronger and faster they're getting throughout the entire series. So I'm going to respond to you with this. The consistent trend in reality is that even though they're getting massively stronger and faster throughout the entire series, they're still holding on to their technique. And there has been no changes in their fighting techniques and what they're using. They're just using them at a higher level. And that will never change. You getting stronger and faster will never change you having technique or a technique. Like you throwing a right cross, your right cross could be infinitely faster and infinitely stronger. But at the end of the day, a right cross, literally what it is you turning your hip and rotating on your feet and pivoting and throwing a right punch forward. No matter how many times you get that, you could get that as stronger and as fast as you want. But at the end of the day, it's still a right cross and it's still a boxing technique. So I think what you're trying to demonstrate in what it is a consistent trend, I'm throwing to you is a consistent trend within that that set that you're presenting me is that they are getting massively stronger and faster during the entire series. And it's really unrealistic to our real world, but their techniques never change. What they're using is just fundamentally the same thing. So
okay, so the consistent trend that I was presenting first was not to say that it is most probable that it will be the case that there are different fighting techniques. It is to basically introduce the feasibility of this idea. And the consistent trend that you proposed was pretty much good by itself, but that's only if we leave that consistent trend in isolation. If we consider all other consistent trend, which suggests the feasibility of there being unrealistic techniques, unrealistic fighting styles that could be introduced as new techniques within the series, right? If we consider these other consistent trends, right, so this other consistent trend, then we're left into like a sticky situation where we're kind of like unable to truly determine, right, what really would be the fact of the matter here. Because obviously the consistent trend that I'm basing my conclusion of leads to this specific thing, which I guess opposes your point of view, and the consistent trend that you're basically presenting here leads to a conclusion which opposes my point of view. But the point is, which consistent trend is actually more impactful from an epistemic point of view? I don't think either of them actually is here. And as I've said prior, and you're already aware of this, it's not like you're oblivious of this, is that I don't believe that I'm against your position, so I don't see any good reason or any good evidence which demonstrates to me that it is definitely more feasible or probable for this to be the case. So I think we can move on after this if you want to give your own response after.
I'll respond to this. I think we've pretty much covered over it, but again, my issue with what you're saying, and I think we probably could come to conclusions with this, is that at the end of the day, you're trying to say it's feasible for their unreasonable strength and speed to affect to the point or get to the point that they start using unreasonable techniques that aren't bound in the real world. But I think I've told you, and I feel like you're just not attacking it. But if you feel like you did, we just continue that during the entirety of the series, even though they're getting even though they're already you would agree they're already unreasonably strong and fast in comparison to us in the real world, they're still in grounds using regular techniques.
I think there's a slight misconception, by the way, but you could continue.
Yeah, that they're still using techniques and they're still using things that we know in the real world. They're still boxing, still kickboxing, still wrestling. They haven't created any transcendental martial art above that. And I'm a sole believer in, and I've told you this, when you're using the fundamentals to create this punch, no matter how much faster and stronger you use this punch or you use this technique, like rotating and kicking upwards, throwing a roundhouse kick, no matter how strong and fast the roundhouse kick is, it's still a roundhouse kick. So I don't think you could ever get to the conclusion that it would change under some type of unreasonable circumstance. I don't think you're really attacking my argument.
Okay, so I was not specifically saying that it's the unreasonable speed and like strength which would cause these unreasonable techniques to be birthed, right, or to come into existence, right? I wasn't saying that specifically. Okay. I was saying that because I remember both of us agreed that like it's kind of like unreasonable based on our current understanding of martial arts from the real life perspective, for there to be different variations of like new different variations of these already established fighting abilities and fighting techniques, right? I believe from the real life perspective. Let me just finish this real quick. Yeah, I think it's unreasonable from the current.
Before you can, we're going to. I'm going to say.
Go ahead.
I'm saying variations in the sense of they're just using martial arts that already exist as applications to other things. That's what I meant for variations.
So I was gonna say that. Yeah, I believe that in that sense it's gonna be unreasonable, right? But obviously that's just us analyzing this topical discourse from a real life lens, from how we understand martial arts to fundamentally work in the real life. But as again, if there's a consistent trend of unreasonability within Lookism, then try to make sense out of Lookism.
Give me a second.
Bosco,
relax. Bosco, stop.
Bro, what the fuck is that GIF, bro?
Stop whining, bro. Okay, continue.
Anyway, yeah, I was gonna say that again, regardless of the fact that it is unreasonable for there to be techniques like new variations of these already established techniques, if that is from a real life lens, right, and we understand that from a fictional Lookism lens perspective, right, it is the case that there's a consistent trend of unreasonability, which you've already granted, by the way, but you try to present or undermine the consistent trend with. Wait. I understand what you're gonna say. You're gonna say only the sense of strength and speed. Yeah, I'm saying that which you already undermined by like giving like your own opposing consistent trend. I'm saying that regardless of the fact that this consistent trend, as we know it, right, is something which is particularly confined to strength and speed, it does not defeat the fact that there's still a consistent trend of unreasonability. And if there's a consistent trend of unreasonability, right, within the fictional Lookism verse, then even if it is unreasonable, right, for there to be like a new variation of these pre-established fighting abilities or fighting techniques, it would still actually be consistent with the Lookism verse for there to be this unreasonable outcome of there being a new fighting technique which so happens to provide combative utility to these characters that we already know within the Lookism verse. Okay. But I think we've already went over this, but do you want to respond again?
And yeah, I'll respond again with this. You're talking about the consistent trend. The verse is grounded based on the real world, and while there is a consistent trend of unreasonability, it's only in the sense of how fast and strong they are. We have yet to see any unreasonable techniques in the 400 something chapters I've been reading this. They have yet to do that. You're saying maybe it's possible that something like this happens, but I'm saying that it's probably the case that it's not, because no matter how much faster and stronger they've been getting progressively during the series, we haven't seen anything branch off from the unreasonability of their strength and speed. So what you're saying, I don't think you have much of a basis in the book. I think they're really grounded in reality. Besides how fast and strong they are, everything else is pretty grounded in reality. So are the techniques. They're really grounded in reality. They're consistent. There's a consistent trend of the techniques being grounded in reality. So I don't think, even if we go another 400 chapters deep, we're going to see a deviation from the techniques changing to something otherworldly. So I think it's pretty fair to me to say that UI Daniel is a master of all martial arts. I think it's super fair to say.
Okay, and I was going to say that, what was I going to say again? Oh, yeah. You're saying that based on what we've seen thus far, like it's kind of like unreasonable for there to be like a new fighting style being introduced. There have been like a lot of things that we did not expect that PTJ basically introduced within the series, like multiple different plot twists and so on. And there are definitely going to be some things that we do not expect. Yeah, I'm saying that there are definitely going to be some things that we do not expect that are definitely about to actually occur within.
Right. And what's the trend? What's the trend for that? Like, they're talking about things. The trend for that is in the sense of
like James Lee's backstory
but
I know we did not expect.
It's in the sense of plot and world building. I'd agree with you that he's throwing stuff at us that we don't expect. But we're like 400, almost like 400 like something chapters in, dog. We're like 440 chapters deep.
I think fighting styles could definitely be a core concept, or it could be like a core like factor of like story building and a plot. I think that could definitely be the case, right?
Well, they have been, but they've never deviated to anything unnatural.
Yeah, but you're saying, again, this is just like a position of like different consistent trends and like induction to achieve different conclusions. I understand that, right?
We've gone back and forth. I feel like, do you feel like
you want to like get to like the statements or some shit?
What do you want to? Don't you think we've gone far enough, or what do you want to get into? I think we're going to conclude. So.
I think that so let's get this clear. So you said to me in the MVC that there are two statements that you believe corroborate that UI Daniel knows all martial arts: the Jared statement and the Samuel statement. I assume that you don't really take the Samuel statement as like something which verifies that, correct?
No, I don't think that's enough. No, I don't really care about the statement. I don't think it's an objective statement. I've already grounded why I think UI Daniel knows all martial arts, because and you've already responded to that. I've given my own reasoning, even external from the statements in themselves. I know they exist, I don't really want to talk about them.
Could I ask you a question, by the way?
Semantical discussion I don't care about.
Do you believe like UI Daniel is like a blitz level or like completely just much faster than like Jerry and so on?
So yeah, boy. Yeah,
way faster and stronger, but I don't think it matters. I'm not using
but so wait a second. So if Jerry's like it's like UI Daniel is way fat. Who is that speaking?
STK.
Let me finish this debate, bro. STK, I got you. Let me finish the debate. All right. I bet that. What's up?
Anyway, I was gonna say if UI Daniel is way stronger and faster than Jerry Con to the point where it's almost impossible for him to actually track his speed from a perceptual and physical point of view. How is it gonna be the case that he's in any reliable position to make a claim that he knows all martial arts?
Apollo,
You're not using the statement?
I'm not using the statement.
So what are you using then to demonstrate that UI Daniel has he knows all martial arts?
His performances and what he's displayed. I mean, you've pretty much agreed with that he's just we were that's what I'm saying. We already talked about this and you responded. I've already told you he displays kickboxing, wrestling, boxing.
Yeah, we agreed that he displays like kickboxing and all of that, right? But I don't recall me agreeing specifically, and I'm not trying to be a rat here. I don't agree with me specifically agreeing with the idea that he has basically displayed these abilities or fighting techniques to the greatest degree, or to the fullest degree, to the point where that would convince both of us mutually that he definitely has a full understanding of martial arts as a whole. I don't fully agree with that. That's something I was always a bit skeptical towards.
Okay. Yeah. So if you agree that he's really displayed so you have no problem with him knowing all the martial arts. You have an issue with him having mastered them.
No, both of them.
Okay, you have an issue with both of those. Okay. I think they've already displayed multiple times during the narrative that he knows all the martial arts that are known in the world. And especially that's why I was getting into the deviation point that I don't think any other deviation is really relevant. I don't think you could call that another martial art. My thing is, right, he's really displayed what everything is based in, wait, give me a second.
Okay, bet.
Hey. Yeah. They even join that. I disconnect that service.
Okay, where were we? Hello? Yeah, I'm just recording something.
Yeah, okay, what's good?
Yeah, where were we?
I was gonna talk about the fact that I was dubious towards the idea that he masters these to the fullest degree, because I believe that there are different levels of mastering abilities, right? So
I think dubious. And then, so we could get into that. We could get into that. Yeah, we've seen them both display, so we know he knows his techniques. The key to mastering these techniques now is doing it in from the basis of bro. Can we mute him, bro? Can we mute him, please? Mute him, please.
I can't mute anyone. I have no problems right now.
Yeah. So what we know and the keys to mastering a technique. Give me a second. My dog was whining, my bad, but I had to leave him out the door. But the keys to us perfecting these martial arts is the strength and speedness of them, and lacking the sort of excessive movement for the cleanliness of them. Now, when we talk about perfect technique, right, which is what it is to master martial art, your technique is perfect, and you must have as minimal excessive movement as possible. And you have to hit them hard, hit them fast, right? You have to be effective in what you do. So when we value the effectiveness of all his techniques, UI Daniel has shown consistently that he's the most effective fighter in the series, 100%.
Yeah, so I would even grant this. I could even steel man this. I could say that he is the most effective fighter in the series, right? But at the same time, what I would not necessarily grant is that him being the most effective fighter in the series automatically leads us to the conclusion that he's an impeccable fighter. And by impeccable, I mean like he's totally flawless. Like there's no flaw within his technique.
I don't think being a master necessitates you being perfect.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's my point, right? And I think that can lead us to like a new conclusion.
What are your criteria for being a master?
No, my criteria of being a master is just reaching a particular level that is professional or is beyond the conventional level of like normal martial artists. That's what I define to be.
So we have okay, that's perfect. In Lookism, they give us a baseline. They value normal martial artists in comparison to like the UFC champion. So we have a UFC. Do you know about this in the verse? They make it.
Yeah, I think there was like some reference regarding like UFC champion or something.
Yes, we see one. We have one. We have one literally fight. So in the second affiliate, we have one of those UFC champions, which they hired in the second affiliate because his fighting prowess is so ridiculous, above the normal average standard, which we would both agree would be that this is like this is a guy who's mastered his craft, right? Who's mastered in craft and just kickboxing. He is nowhere near the level of the other martial artists because even though he's mastered his craft, there are still levels on the game, which you and me have discussed, which are in the sense as people are just stronger and faster in martial arts, right? Now, UI Daniel is regarded to be the strongest and the fastest in the verse because he has this perfect body. That doesn't mean he can't get hit. He does get hit. I'm perfectly okay with that. But in the sense that we've already established a baseline to what is this high above the average, and we know that these MMA champions are are considered these masters in their craft, and then they just pale in comparison to this character. I'm so confident into saying that this guy has mastered his martial arts moves.
But when I investigated like your reasoning a while ago, you presented, I think it's two of them. One of them is the fact that you're under the first impression that like he masters or he knows all martial arts based on his performance.
No, not the first. The first impression. I'm under the impression that he's mastered all martial arts due to that he's mastered his martial arts due to what the series gives us, and they give us this baseline for what a fighter is, what this a really good martial artist is, what this like, oh, this guy's an MMA champion, he's so great, like this guy is like one of the greats. So now we have this baseline of what is the average martial artist. Now we connect the baseline for what is the way above average. What is something that is way above average, right? And they usually, and in multiple of the series, I don't know if you've read Questism or any of the series.
I was like 50 chapters in Questism actually. Yeah,
they give us like stat criterias, right? And we have these people who would be way above the initial crew head stage, and even in the crew head stage, they thought the dudes that were fighting the crew heads were like triple S, and they couldn't even measure like how great their techniques and stuff was. So these people, they even in the series implies that these people are like masters in their craft. But then there are people who are masters above masters, and we know this, and they've made like statements like this. This MMA fighter would be one of them, and his MMA fighter pales in comparison to the use of techniques and the effectiveness of the strength and speed of a bunch of other characters in the series that UI Daniel is just sitting above them. So I think it's like, unless you have like a crazy opposition to that, I think it's really clear that UI Daniel has mastered his martial arts.
Well, I think the crazy opposition here is just going to be, well, I guess I was criticizing the statements, which you weren't really using, by the way, so that's not relevant, but I wanted to like get that out of the way. I was initially saying that.
I don't care for using the statements. I feel
you don't care about this. Okay, so let's just say
I think I could justify, I feel like I could justify
without the statements. Okay.
Externals, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say to you that I don't believe that mastery of these specific set of martial arts indicates knowledge of all martial arts. That's the conclusion that I don't see any logical connection or relation between the premise and the conclusion.
I'm confused. I thought you're saying you are disagreeing with both. Wait, let me open the door for my dog.
Sure.
Okay, man. Being weird. Go get it. I'm back. Yes.
Yeah.
You're saying that you don't believe he knows all martial arts, and you don't think that he's mastered them either. So I've gone.
No, I never said that. Okay, I never said he doesn't master the martial arts. I was saying to you that
I thought that was again that's my fault. That's my fault.
That was the point. Yeah, I was just because I even said to you that there are different degrees of mastery. So yeah, obviously it's conspicuous that he masters martial arts that he's used, right? Because
we have to reach this point of discussion because we were just talking about the variation. Now we talked about him mastering his techniques, and so now that we've talked about both those things, we have to come to now this other conclusion: the baselines that we know that he knows. Where is the deviation that leads us to the conclusion that there are other martial arts that he doesn't know? What is your?
I think you're trying to put this. I think you're putting this unnecessary probative burden on me. Whereas I'm not in any position, or I don't need to actually present like an explicit deviation, right? The fact of the matter is, if it is the case that the two baselines, the two benchmarks you're using for saying that he knows all martial arts, which is your debate position, right? If your two baselines, it's going to be, well, he masters these set of martial arts that we have observed within the series better than so far everyone, right, or almost everyone, and the fact that he has this, what was it again, the mastery of martial arts plus what else? You said another point actually coupled along with the mastery.
So so I'll establish this. He knows wrestling, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Li Tsui, pancration, and Sistema and BJJ, which are the core for every combat sport. Every combat sport from the beginning of time to now. That's the core of all of them. BJJ being the most recent one. He knows all of those. Now, I'm saying that there is the only deviations from this are the literal applications of them in scenarios. Those aren't different martial arts. Those are using martial arts in different scenarios. I'm saying that there are, and we were talking about this deviation point before, there are no real deviations, or there are no deviations in general from those that you could say he doesn't know all the martial arts.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is why you were saying that it is kind of like trivial to continue, because this is going to go back to, and I would like to add like this other factor to my arguments. This is going to go back to the unreasonability point, but I could then say, well, we understand that Lookism is all a part of the PTJ verse, right? And within the PTJ verse, there are like unreasonable stuff that we've seen, like for example in Questism, right? Like that character gets buffed, like kind of like, like those fucking like games, for example, where it's like getting buffed with cards and shit. Yeah, that's kind of like the concept in Questism, and that is pretty unreasonable, right? Like he's talking to like this weird like figure who is like unobservable and so on. Like these are like unreasonable things which don't seem to be realistic or happening.
And then, but it's also
so it's not only like strength and speed. Go ahead.
I think the author consistently keeps the technique untouched to where the things that they're doing in the sense of fighting are extremely reasonable. Because he's introducing like different techniques from the beginning of time and stuff like that, stuff that makes it cool. I think once the author deviates from that, it becomes a little weirder.
Here's my response.
He never like what I'm saying. I'll say this real quick. The author never deviates from the uses of techniques being classical and being something otherworldly. They never deviate from that. You're saying
so in isolation, this inductive reasoning is plausible. I agree. You could say that yes. It is consistently shown that the author keeps these techniques classical, right? But you could also say that it is consistently shown since the start of the series that the author introduces unreasonable abilities regarding strength, speed, and even the card ability.
We could conclude. We would have been over that.
Yeah. So I think like it's like a battle of like induction reason or inductive reason.
You want to conclude?
You can go first.
I know who's Saruki in it. Yeah. Came from pancration. Oh yeah, I think he was a pancration champion. But yeah, I'll go to conclusion. Yeah, in all, I've displayed. So I've basically asserted that UI Daniel knows, and my position is that he knows all martial arts. I've said that he knows wrestling, kickboxing, pancration, Li Tsui, Muay Thai, BJJ, and all the strike and BJJ, everything that is all the known martial arts right now that we know. I'm saying that him knowing all the known martial arts that we know now, and there being no capable deviation from them other than the application of them to certain things to create new mixes, which are not new martial arts. So it's something that he would have mastered. We've already established that he's mastered these martial arts that I've established what martial arts he does know, which fits the criteria for him being knowing and being a master of all martial arts. And so I feel like my opponent has pointed out there being some unreasonability within the verse, which would lead to unreasonable techniques being born, which UI Daniel wouldn't know. I disagree with that because consistently during the 400 chapters of Lookism, and even in all the other series, he's kept the techniques classical. He's kept them untouched. The techniques haven't become anything unordinary to any degree, even though the characters are getting unreasonably stronger and faster, and they're doing like all these mystical things. It's a consistent trend within the verse that technique is untouched. They're still using boxing, wrestling, kickboxing, and all these type of things, and it's still the same thing. 400 chapters in, 200 chapters here, and all the chapters in all these other verses. It's still the same thing consistently. I don't think Apollo's attacked that. I think at the baseline, from what we've established, he does know and is a master of all martial arts. And if there are some martial arts that he's saying that will come from this unreasonability, the trend of unreasonability that he's presented is not consistent with techniques ever changing ever in the verse, because I've provided an opposing trend to that, which they only get stronger and faster. That's literally it. So there it is. I think that's my conclusion. I think that's why that one.
So my conclusion is just that I believe that I was just taking the position, as you guys know, that I don't believe there's any good reason to believe or that suggests that this character, UI Daniel more specifically, knows all martial arts. Well, the fundamental basis of Jester's arguments is just that, well, it appears to be the case. Well, he didn't even use the statement, so my objections to those statements would be particularly irrelevant here. His major arguments or reasoning is just the fact that, well, we understand that UI Daniel supposedly has like a master of these like core concepts within martial arts, right? And I would say that he masters these things, but I don't agree that he has like an impeccable mastery over these things, right? And I think we reach like a compromise regarding that. But I think the major points here that I would like to establish is that I believe that the way how Jester kind of like phrased his argument, I think he kind of like blindly ignored other opposing consistent trend and just focus on this particular consistent trend to kind of like push his own idea instead of like being a more of a good faith argument, be like, well, considering this other consistent trend that you've presented, I don't think I'm in any better position really to say that it would be the case more likely that there would not be any new fighting technique being introduced. He said that it is consistently the case that there's no new fighting technique or there's no unorthodox fighting technique that has been introduced by the author, right? And I also said that it is consistently shown since the start of the series that from an abilities perspective, when it comes to like overall abilities, right, and skills as a whole, right, from that broader generalization perspective, right, it is the case that the author consistently inputs, right, unreasonable and unrealistic abilities. Like, for example, strength and speed is obviously going to be a part of abilities, but not in the sense of fighting techniques. But there's also the questionism appeal I made, which is a part of the same verse as Lookism, by the way, still PTJ verse. And he granted that there are these multiple different instances of like unrealistic, you could say, abilities, right? But he tried to push his own consistent trend over the mine, right? I don't think there's any symmetry breaker or anything really in a determinant factor, which demonstrates why, regardless of what he's saying regarding the consistent trend, that would basically lead us to his conclusion be more likely, when under my consistent trend, it would also be the case in isolation that it is more likely or it is likely that there would be a new introduction of fighting technique. I wasn't saying there would be, but I said it is definitely a feasible conclusion and just as feasible as his conclusion. And because of this, like, you know, there's just like an equivalence in feasibility. I don't think there's anything which suggests his conclusion be more feasible, which is his inherent burden from the very beginning of this debate, which is why I think I won. Good debate, bro.
Yeah, just good debate. Let me stop recording.
Yeah.
15 minutes. We could end it at 30. I don't think the other point was necessary, but we're chilling. The action's getting deleted out here is crazy.
I'm just gonna make yeah. But that argument isn't that bad though, Jester. It isn't that bad.
Is this it? What's today's date?
Let's see. So what do you think about like Samdek like versus UI Daniel? You still believe Samdek beats him, bro?
I think it'll be a really good fight.
Yeah. Like, what if like UI Daniel wins in virtue of like him just being physically superior? If that even is true.
That's possible. Yeah, I'm up to that. Yeah, I think they have an extremely relative fight. I lean a little bit towards Samdak because he knows how to deal with physically stronger people. The problem that UI Daniel presents is that he's physically stronger and faster than everybody, and he's literally a master of all the techniques that they know. So that's the issue.
Do you think UI Daniels' unconsciousness affects his battle IQ, and that would give like Samdak the edge in IQ perspective?
No, his IQ is just like it's like that of a machine's. Samdak has could get creative with it, you could say. So that might give him an edge. But the thing that gives UI Daniel an edge is because he's unconscious. No matter how much you're literally gonna have to kill him to stop him. That's like the problem. He's a berserker. He's like a berserker with perfect technique and skill. That's which is ridiculous. So.
I agree.
Yeah, that's it. I was just taking like a DA position, bro. I was like, there's like this topic I could Jester on.
Yeah.
Like it's a DA position. Like it's kind of like more obvious that UI Daniel knows all martial arts. Just like a DA position I'm taking.
It's not even a DA. People talk about this all the time on the Reddit, so this is really heavily talk.
Jester, did you say you think UFC champions like master martial arts?
No, I'm saying that in the series, because I actually like Apollo for like his criteria. What do you think like a master of a martial art is? Like a master of martial arts, and he's like this baseline above what the average practitioner is, and in the verse, like they hold like these UFC champions to like a very high regard above like the average practitioner of the martial artist. So then,
because I was just gonna say that most UFC champions don't even master their martial art.
Like, I don't think so. I think
retire.
There are some exceptions. I think, unironically, I think Khabib is like a master of.
Hey, hold on.
Of Sambo.
Wait, like, do you not think that like a lot of UFC champions are like masters of like their like chosen art?
No,
because I wouldn't say that they're like the greatest like ever, but like it depends on like what you define as like master.
Kareem, think of it this way. So in the UFC, it's the easiest sport to become champion because you can have holes in your game. Like you can have only okay wrestling and amazing striking.
No, I agree. No, I agree. Like, but like more so like I don't know how to like word it, but like.
Just most.
I would think like a lot of. I would think that like a pretty decent amount of them would be a master and at least like one, depending on like what you define as like a master, right? Or like which martial art in particular we are talking about. Because I think that Khabib is like a master.
And put them in ADCC, they would get destroyed.
Any? I don't know.
Yeah, they would. They would get like Gordon Ryan would whoop Khabib.
Well, I mean, even then though, there's like levels to like mastery. Like even like after you're like a master, there's still like
Gordon Ryan's insane. Do you know who Gordon?
Like there's still people better.
Gordon Ryan's the best grappler in the world right now.
Yeah, like I think even like after you're a master already, right? There's still like levels to it. Even after that,
yeah, definitely. Like
because even being like a black belt is like doesn't really mean
you learn stuff every day. Exactly, like this black like my teacher.
Plus, there's like I learned like fucking like 5th degree black belts, right? Like
exactly. My teacher's a black belt. My coach and learns new stuff every day. Goes to
plus, depending on like what art you're doing, like a black belt genuinely might not mean anything.
Just
like it just depends on the art, because for a lot of arts, being a black belt is like genuinely just like cool.